No, I don't. How about you? Anybody have those old, oops.
We're now live streams.
We've got ancient communication arts.
All right. A lot of back and forth, but I
There
think we're
live.
all right. So I'll hit record and I'll let in the one person in the waiting room, and if Carrie doesn't show up, we can push the oath of office for the next time.
Sounds good.
Right. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So welcome everybody to the March 3rd meeting of the Design and Review Board. The meeting will now come to order. Alan, would you like to take roll?
All right, let's do it. So first, Ted Luthen,
Here.
Lars Langberg,
Here.
Barry Bush.
Here.
Ron had called in to excuse himself. And Marshall, the newest board member, also asked to be excused for this first meeting. And that only leaves Christine Lovell, who I've not heard from at this point. So at this time, she's unexcused.
Okay. Thank you for that. We're going to push oaths of office since we don't have an oath giver. And that brings us to 3 sets of minutes. We had the 43-page minutes from November 16th. This was the Bodega Avenue. Everybody have a chance to review those?
Mm-hmm.
Any comments or corrections to those minutes?
Nope.
Do not.
All right, let's just, we might as well approve them one at a time. So would somebody like to introduce a motion to approve the minutes?
Sure, I'll move to approve those minutes.
Sounds good. Do we have a second?
Have a second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved by unanimous vote. Moving on to the minutes from the 2nd of December. This was 9 pages talking about 652 Petaluma Avenue, Vintage Tree Care, tree removal application. Any comments on these minutes?
Well, I'd like to note that I was excused from that meeting, so therefore, I don't know if you guys can approve those.
Okay. Alan, we probably need to push that set to the next meeting.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
2 of us. And then what's our status on the next set?
Same situation.
Same situation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I had to recuse myself from that meeting for proximity.
Right.
All right, so that brings us to the end of our minutes. Item 5, Planning Department update on matters of general interest. Anything going on in the city?
So I guess the only real update that I have for you guys is on the Woodmark project. So they withdrew their formal design review application, but they have resubmitted, or they've submitted a new application under Senate Bill 35, which, Ted, I think you were at the housing law presentation last year.
Yeah.
In short, says if the city's, oh, Carrie, you were there as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry. You guys were both there.
All 3.
I think I was there too, yes.
I apologize.
It's okay.
One day. So what SB 35 essentially means is that they can submit an application, and or what they've done is they submitted an application under SB 35, basically requesting that, or stating essentially they believe that they're exempt to the design review process because they can qualify as a ministerial project, as the city is not meeting our RHNA allocation, or regional housing need allocation. So they've submitted a kind of a intent to submit application at this time, and the city is essentially taking that and kind of getting the ball rolling in terms of the process on our end. So I'm not working on that one directly, but that's kind of the update that I have for it at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So we're evaluating and we'll determine whether it is or is not consistent with SB 35 and the ministerial process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really all that I have on that. All right. So I think that's the planning department updates at this time. Oh, and Marshall Ball Alf was appointed to the design review board as the alternate. So
Yeah.
that's the news.
Meeting our new.
Can I, Alan, I want to ask you about the Woodmark project. So from
Sure.
my understanding, if that application meets those criteria, it's a big shortcut, right? It basically I mean, they may take into account all those comments we gave them before, but they don't have to.
Yes.
So I know Christine has actually been tracking this, and Bob Anderson has been tracking it, talking to the neighbors. And so I asked Christine, like, I wonder how the neighbors are going to feel about this. And she said, they're freaking out. So I have no opinion per se, but I'm just curious is this going to be, if it meets those standards, is there any forum for the neighbors to talk about it in a way? Or
So with it, I believe what SB 35 really does is it gets rid of the discretion portion of the project. I believe, and don't quote me on this one, I believe we can have one public hearing, but it's really more just an informational public meeting
Mhm.
rather than a hearing per se. But that's kind of my understanding of it. And once again, at this point, we are still, one, we don't have the full SB 35 application, and two, we're still kind of just we're trying to get everything up and running for when it does come in.
Mhm.
So essentially at this point, they just submit that notice of intention to
Okay.
submit. So that's where we're at with it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any comments from the public regarding items not on our agenda? Does our attendee have anything to say, or did you receive anything electronically?
So I did not, and I think Nate Morgan is the applicant.
Okay.
That's up.
Then we will assume that there's nothing. Any conflicts of interest? Assume if there were, we would have one less member. So let's move right into our one agenda item, 6789 Walker Avenue, fencing around an oxygen tank.
All right, so thank you for that. And before I begin, I do want to note that I believe the report refers to the property as the Sebastopol Specialty Hospital, when in fact I believe it is the Sonoma Specialty Hospital. So that's just a discrepancy in the report that I want to clarify before diving into it.
Gotcha.
All right, so this project is a design review application for the installation of a new bulk oxygen system composed of 2 white oxygen storage tanks, 1 primary and 1 secondary, and ambient vaporizer and associated equipment, all located within the parking lot. The bulk oxygen system is proposed to be screened with a 7-foot tall chain link fence with slats in an earth tone color around the oxygen system. And the oxygen system is proposed to connect to the existing supply lines. It's my understanding they're looking to upgrade essentially their storage of oxygen for the current needs of the hospital. So the proposed bulk oxygen system is consistent with the hospital and its needs, as well as the zoning. The project would result in elimination of 8 surplus parking spaces. However, the hospital will still have a surplus of 119 parking spaces to absorb this loss. And staff does have some concern regarding the height of the structure and the screening materials, the chain link fence with slats. And the concern with the height is due to the fact that the primary oxygen tank is about 19 feet tall, whereas the height limit for accessory structures is 17 feet. However, the code does have an exception to exceed the height limit by up to 5 feet for equipment such as gas storage tanks. So that's just one item to note. As mentioned earlier, the project has a 7-foot tall chain link fence with slats going around the proposed equipment. The fencing will provide a partial screen along with the existing landscaping. And additionally, given that the equipment is located uphill from the right-of-way, staff anticipates a minimal visual impact from the street view. Ultimately, staff is supportive of the project, but is seeking the board's input on whether a higher quality fence and or landscaping island with root barriers should be added, or whether a higher quality fence and or a landscape island with root barriers should be added to like the west side of the equipment to add a little bit of additional screening of the oxygen tanks. And in conversations with the applicant, he has stated that auction yards are typically utilize either chain link fences or CMU block walls for screening, as they're non-combustible materials. And additionally, if the board is supportive of the chain link fence with slats, I guess my question to the board is there a preferred color that you prefer for the screening material? So that really concludes staff's report. And if you have any questions of me, please let me know.
All right, thanks for that, Alan. Any questions for staff? Seeing none, let's see if our applicant has anything to add to the conversation.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me here. My name's Nate. I'm with Aspen Street Architects. We're obviously hired by the hospital, developed a plan set. The jurisdictional authority is ultimately the state, OSHPD, but for anything out in the on the site in the parking areas, the local jurisdiction obviously has a say, and OSHPD wants you guys all to provide a letter or approval that it meets local jurisdiction requirements. So that's why we're all here. Yeah, as Alan, I think, explained it, the existing oxygen is down at the back of the hospital. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with the layout over there, but they used to have a large tank down there 5, 6, 7 years ago. Their provider was no longer able to get their vehicles down there. So we switched them out to larger Doors tanks, which are smaller than the large tank that they had there, but they're portable tanks, but on the larger side. That's no longer adequate for their facilities needs. So they really need to go back to a bulk oxygen system. The tank that they have selected is a vertical tank. Alan asked if they could go horizontal at one point. There are horizontal systems out there, but that's not what they're looking at. It is a vertical tank. It's a the main one is 3,000 gallons. And we did place it as far back on the site as possible where the trucks can still access it. They use long vehicles come in and have to make that turn in the parking lot. And this is down at the end of the parking lot. And as Alan says, it does stick up pretty high. It's a 19 feet high is the main tank. Secondary tank is, I think, about 10 feet. And the vaporizers are around that, a little shorter than the secondary tank, I believe. So that kind of is what it is. I did mention this to the hospital folks. I guess I don't see any of them on the line right now. They are open to whatever they need to do to make this happen. It's got to happen for them to continue to serve their needs.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Any questions for our applicant?
I have a question. So I went out on site and there's a big horizontal tank out there now, Praxair, oxygen, looks like oxygen.
That's right. That's a temporary oxygen system that they, when they started introducing COVID patients, they got approval from the state to bring that in as a temporary means. It's plugged into their emergency supply connection right now. This would, go kind of in that area, but a little more to the middle of the parking lot, and the piping would be trenched towards that same location, connecting to the mechanical room there in the northeast corner of the building.
And so that whole system would go away then?
That's correct. Yeah, that's just temporary.
Okay, and as part of that, do you know if the chain link was put up as a visual screening or just a security kind of thing?
The one that's around it now?
Yeah.
I'm sure they just put it up for security. I'm sure the state required them to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Carrie, any questions?
We talked about its minimal visual impact from Highway 116, but I was curious when I look online and I did my Google Earth and you have the Petaluma Avenue homes that sort of look down from the second and third story into the parking lot. I think that'll have some visual impacts, but I was also curious if there's been any kind of study done from the facilities in itself, from the actual Sonoma Specialty Hospital, where they're actually looking across into the parking lot, as well as the visual impacts that might have. Has any consideration been given for that, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, so where the proposed location is, it is visible, obviously, from patient rooms, if that's what you're asking. Per the code, though, it's far enough away that it's not an issue for building code and OSHPD standards. And yes, Petaluma Avenue homes or apartments, I'm not sure what it's called, is a larger it's at least 2 stories. I don't know if it's 3 stories. We'll be able to see the side of it. There is a row of, are those the crepe myrtles, Alan, along the northern edge of the parking lot right now? I believe last I was out there, those are 15 to 20 feet high along the edge of the parking lot. But as obviously the tenants that live up on the top floors are seeing over that. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was having some technical difficulties in transferring over. So earlier when I was talking to you about the landscaping, the crepe myrtle, that was just kind of a suggestion as a general landscaping tree on the west side of it, just given that it's has typically less invasive roots and it tends to be friendlier in terms of those type of damages to a property. I don't know if the existing landscaping is on the site currently.
Yeah, it's pretty dense across the northern edge of the parking lot there. So down at street level, ground level, they can't see through that. That's at least 15, maybe 20 feet high. I believe that's probably the crepe myrtle also. I'm not a landscape architect, but it looked similar to me when I Googled what it was. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be visible from people up on a 2nd or 3rd floor.
Yeah, it's 3 floors on that side, so I think that's where.
Yeah, you're right. There's the picture. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Yeah.
So if there were a landscape component to softening the impact for the vertical height, where might that occur? Would it be adjacent to the structure itself, or would it actually be across the road to those islands? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, it could be adjacent to it. Alan, can you pull up the floor plan, or do you want me to or the site? Or do you want me to share?
1 second and I can pull that up. I think we had previously actually, if I give you access rights, can you pull it up, Nate?
Yeah, I've got a plan here. I don't know if it's the same one you had got, but I think it'll give everyone the general idea.
Okay. I just made you a co-host so you can share now.
Yeah, let me make sure I pick my right screen here. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yep, we can see that.
Okay. So this is the hospital here. Petaluma Ave's out to the left. This is the proposed location. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So those apartments you're talking about are to the top of the screen off the drawing. So we do have to have a certain amount of feet around the structure where you cannot park. That's why there is hatched existing parking stalls now, but it'll be a hatched striped area of pavement to the right and to the left. That one to the left is where you could put a row of the crepe myrtles, which could potentially get to the 20 feet in that, basically that existing stall, which would be no longer a parking stall. So you could put some directly there, which would screen the view from the west. It's not going to screen the view from the north, from those apartments.
Yeah.
And just so you understand where it's located here, the trucks will come in and make a turn. And that's actually why there's no parking here, for instance, is that the clearance on the trucks turning, you can see one here, they're pretty long. So this is really one of the few locations in this parking lot where this works as far back as we got.
Mm-hmm.
And Nate, you had talked about horizontal versus vertical tanks, but for you or for the hospital, it makes most sense to do it vertically. Is that what you're saying?
The vendor that they are negotiating with or have a contract with supplies vertical tanks.
Got it. Okay.
And usually, I mean, I admit it, usually when we do these projects, they're kind of at the back of the hospital. Some of them are open, to public view or whatnot, but usually they're more at the back of the hospital in a, utility maintenance type area. They just don't have that here. This is where the old setup was, and the vehicles just can't make these bigger trucks nowadays just can't make this drive down here to supply that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, because 19 feet tall, that's actually taller than the hospital building.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is visually from Petaluma, if you could see it, but you can't see it from Petaluma. You see it from the drive that comes up to the apartments.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly visible. I mean, this is what you're looking at with a 7-foot high chain link fence.
Yeah.
Again, they could plant stuff, and the hospital's open to that will obscure that, but the view from the apartments, you're not going to be able to get with that.
Kind of is what it is. Yeah.
Nate, I don't know the system itself, but I'm just curious, is there generally a lot of piping that goes to the ground? Is there, I know you have penetrations holding these tanks down. There's usually, foundation anchorables.
Yeah, it's on a.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I want to go ahead.
Yeah, are there just additional pipes and things that actually does it come up through the slab that you're proposing to hold these tanks down, or are they surface mounted, or do you see a lot of pipes on the surface?
The
Tanks?
the tanks get anchored down. There'll be a huge concrete slab here.
Yeah.
Flush with the ground. And there's concrete out in the parking lot too, because oxygen you don't want it, if it does spill, you don't want it spilling on asphalt, combustible in that way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a vaporizer back in here, and there will be some manifold piping. It'll all be down at a lower level, and then it'll be trenched over to the connection point over here.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So all the rest of this equipment is lower, but actually, the vaporizer does stick up about 10 feet, as well as that secondary tank right there.
Nate, is there a minimum fence height that's required?
No, this is just a security, just so people can't get in there and play around with things.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so it'll get trenched over like that.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. All right.
All right. Any other questions of our applicant?
No, but it's a great application and really clear. I appreciate your your graphic submittal here. It's helpful. Thanks, Nate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Actually, there's also a photo I just noticed at the very end of your whole application of that has 12 tanks in a little field.
Mm-hmm.
That's a nice picture.
Yeah.
All right. So thanks, Nate. Appreciate the little more information on that. So coming back to the board, how are we feeling about this, Carrie?
Yeah. I personally like the vertical tanks. Generally, I'm articulating in some of our projects where you have water tanks, that do kind of jut out. They're honest. They're holding water. There's a lot of infrastructure that comes to the ground level that generally we don't want to see. So we actually put in a little wall around it to kind of hold that. It kind of anchors the structure itself down. It kind of gives it some weight in the mass of the base to really kind of, hold it down. And it also is a good visual barrier to obscure some of the piping that's running along the ground, or some of the other pumps that are usually penetrating tanks and all that other stuff. So, the hospital needs oxygen. So I think they need oxygen. They need it to where they can put it. I think the visual impact from the Petaluma Avenue homes is probably a little bit hard for me to get on board with to some degree. So how that's maybe screened visually, having trees adjacent to these tanks, I don't think is probably the best foot forward. I would think maybe if, I mean, this, I'm just kind of talking out loud, but you know, the parking lot that's across from where the tanks will be, closer to the Petaluma Avenue homes, there are no fingers currently included in that parking lot. And today's code requires, you know, orchard parking planting is that you would have a tree every at least 5 stalls or less. So maybe if that was their screening opportunity, it may happen by pulling out a stall or 2 for the cars on that opposite parking row. That may help with the sense of scale, right? So crepe myrtles are a great choice tree because they're good for these conditions. But I think you're not trying to, you know, hide these structures. I don't think that's would be honest. It would probably only just clutter it up even more. And then the chain link fence itself is just cluttering it up. And it also doesn't have anything that really holds down the base. So you're seeing clearly some chain link, you know, probably galvanized pipes coming out of the ground, and then chain link comes in there, and you're kind of seeing under it, you seeing over it. And it's primarily just a security issue. If we're okay with the fact that it'll just be for purely security and access, then that's what it is. And that's what we'll be okay with. But from an aesthetic perspective, I don't think it really hits the mark, unfortunately. I love its honesty in its own little enclave to be able to service it and use it. But I think it's great, but it just, I think a CMU block wall, maybe going up maybe 4 feet and then having fencing above that may help, you know, break up the static quality of just what a chain link fence would be. So those are just comments for us to talk about maybe. But those are just some shared thoughts more than anything.
Yeah, you know, and thinking about trees, I was, you know, looking at the site plan. And maybe we need to bring Nate back into this. If you moved the installation south to the other side of the island, you've got a fairly large planter strip there between those 2 rows of parking.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the oxygen tank's on the north side. If you moved it to the south side, then you could plant on the north side and screen to the apartments.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that does for the delivery vehicle now.
I think if, can I talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I think if we move it to the south side, it would have to also move more to the west.
To the left, you say?
Yeah, to the west, yeah.
West, okay, yeah. Yeah, and you know, moving closer to the highway, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I really don't think this is going to be visible from the highway. So moving to the west doesn't bother me. And then my personal concern is really the view from those apartments next door.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Lars, what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree pretty much with what Carrie said, like hiding some of the low-level piping is a good idea, but a 19-foot tank, I'd rather celebrate it, really. I mean, you know, like that picture I was referencing with about 12 tanks, you know, it looks, that to me is a very compelling image, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's an industrial kind of thing, right? So putting a little, you know, chain link fence in front, it's so incongruous. It makes it worse to me.
Mm.
So how, you know, that's why I asked about the minimum height. Like I'd almost want something as low as possible just to deal with security and to hide those other kind of elements. But you know, let the 19 feet thing go ahead. And even trees, to me, like planting trees in front of it, maybe after many years it would really screen it, but in the meantime, it's kind of like, yeah, oh yeah, I see that thing back there. You're not trying to hide, I get it. So I get all that, you know, Petaluma Avenue homes, I saw that too when I was out there. They're looking at a pretty ugly hospital building as it is. So this is not, to me, is not making it worse. It's just a necessary element for the hospital, and it's a more interesting one to me. So, I mean, I'd be up whatever for Ted, your suggestion, if that can work and we can plant that strip, sure, that's fine. I think overall it is what it is, kind of.
Yeah. And I like Carrie's idea too of screening the plumbing basically
Mhm.
and pipes and those sorts of things. Because right down on Petaluma, just just south and on the other side of the highway there's the city's water tanks,
Yeah, right.
pressurized water tanks, and they're screened with black iron fencing.
That's right. Yeah.
And it happens to have vines growing up it that I don't think we necessarily want. It's not like we want close to an oxygen tank, but they're dark and they kind of become transparent. And you see the tank behind them, and those tanks don't bother me. I pass them every day. So yeah, I'm not super troubled by the tank. I'd be up for a low CMU wall to screen the plumbing, and then go up with black iron or something like that, and let it be more or less transparent.
Yeah, I always love the fact that you can celebrate the structural. I mean, I know that sounds really dorky, but it's kind of what they are, I think they're just pretty cool forms, and you got to celebrate its honesty. And I think that fashion, I think you said it well, Lars. And well, there you go.
If I can just add one thing,
Sure.
If you do talk about CMU wall to any extent, we'd really want to limit it to just 2 walls. The minute you create a third wall, and I don't even think it matters with the height of it, we'll run into some issues with the state. I apologize. I'm not an expert on all this. I think it might be something with trapping fumes. So we really need to limit it, if we're going to go with CMU, to 2 walls if possible, 2 sides.
Gotcha. A leak of some sort. You don't want to create a vapor dam.
Yeah, trap.
Gotcha.
Shows what we know. I know.
And I do know that we originally went in with I believe a 6-foot chain link fence with the state, and I think they requested that it become a 7-foot fence.
Gotcha. That's good to know.
So then it becomes a question of is it just a simple chain link fence? Is it a different color? Does it have woven, astroturf in it, or like what is the fence itself?
Sure, yeah.
If we have to have that, what does that look like? And then do we also want to add planting in some fashion? Right.
Yeah. Or do we want to say that I'm looking at this elevation has like a horizontal in the fence at 3 feet. Do we want to say that the lower 3 feet has some sort of visual obstruction, the upper section is left open?
I guess it could be just a CMU wall just on the north side, right? From the Petaluma Avenue homes, you see that as a low strip, and then fence above it to a certain height.
Yeah.
The north side is where the largest gate is. It's a 5-foot sliding gate.
Oh, the gate. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the question really now is, at this point for me, is there something better than chain link? I mean, I know there's some no climb, anti-theft type architectural fences out there. You'd have to pay a little more for that. So, I mean, it becomes a cost-effective issue, I think, in some way. But I mean, aesthetically, chain link is going to be the low-hanging fruit to build, and as well as to service. I'm sure it'll hold up well, but it's definitely not the most aesthetic, and it doesn't glorify any of what's kind of there, which maybe we don't want to. But looking at least at a nicer profile of fencing is probably for the best interest of the neighbors and their view in, I think, at that point. that's also an opinion as well.
Well, I think this, let's see if can I share my screen? I think I can. I think it'll let me do it.
Ted, you should be able to share your screen.
That's the
Mhm.
across the street.
Yep, that's better.
Yeah, it really becomes, almost completely transparent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dark stuff and, even the plumbing, that doesn't really bother me.
Mhm. Mhm. Agreed.
And I'm guessing that the narrowness of the vertical keeps someone's toe from getting in there to climb.
That's correct. Yeah.
Probably climb a chain link a lot easier than I could climb that thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My chain link, I think my chain link climbing days are over.
Thankfully. So that's interesting. It says propose a open fence, just a nicer fence. Like it's not trying to put any, woven little tarp material in there of an earth tone color, but just a nicer material that's open.
Yeah.
Is it fair to ask the applicant what his thoughts may be for this discussion?
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable, or
Yeah, let's yeah.
what's the intent? Yeah.
You always screen these things? Are they sometimes left open? How are they normally handled?
Yeah, as I said, usually they're at the back of a hospital, but they are, if they're not in an enclosed court area that's security controlled, they either have chain link or CMU block on certain sides. So they typically, chain link is just obviously the cheapest economical solution. I definitely, I like what you guys are talking about. I just let you know, we generally go with what's the most economical, and I can't really speak for the hospital as far as if they'll be excited about changing to something that may cost a little more, but ultimately you got to do what they got to do.
All right. So what do we want to do with this thing, people?
Well, so there's the fence issue, and then there's so you guys talked about switching sides to plant. Is that something we want to talk more about at all, or?
It's just going to add more cost to the project.
Yeah.
And I think where at least I see it looks like a some sort of utility vehicle and a parking slip. It looks like, again, pocketing trees and putting in new fingers for trees on that north edge, with, again, losing maybe 2 or 3 new parking stalls would be awesome. But, that's just adding to the scope of project, and that's not what we're here to review. I'm not designing this. I'm here to review it. So if I had any kind of information to give here, it would be just trying to lure our client away from a chain link fence and going with something that's maybe a little architecturally suitable for its surrounding and for enclosure, also for safety, and hopefully it looks better than it would with the chain link fence around it.
Yeah. Yes, maybe what we do is a continuance to allow the applicant to explore a more architectural solution. Consider some screening, but it sounds like that's kind of a secondary desire from the board. Sounds like our first priority would be a fence upgrade, right?
I think so. That's well said, actually, Ted.
All right. Somebody want to throw a motion for continuance on the table?
I guess just one question on that is this, for instance, we're dealing with a hospital, is there actually kind of a schedule implication for continuance?
Can I say something to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think there definitely is a schedule implication. This is the only thing that the state is waiting on is the local jurisdiction approval letter to be able to approve the project. I think there's probably a way you could do that. You give a conditional approval in a letter, based on and note, the required changes to the screening. That's kind of an insignificant thing to the state, I believe, as far as the plans are concerned. And then if I can also I want to make sure everyone also understands that there are, and it hasn't come up, around the fencing, there's also bollards because this is in a vehicle path of travel, essentially. There is bollards to protect. And even if you went with a fence that you were showing there on further down Petaluma, I think we'd still have the bollards out lining it. To protect it, because that fence could still come down if somebody had enough speed going into it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Yep.
Alan, procedurally, sounds like none of us have any problems with the hardware of the thing, kind of the meat of the application, which is this system. Can we approve that and then ask to see the kind of architectural side of it, the fence come back?
We could do that, or if you guys want, we could also kind of craft a condition basically saying that the fencing material should be kind of matching the example that you showed earlier, Ted. And that way I can handle it and kind of verify it once they send it over to me. That's just another alternative that we can look into, but I think we could also kind of approve the bulk of it and then maybe have the fencing returned to, I think we've done this before, where it returns to one board member to kind of give the final okay. If you'd rather have that rather than allocating that to staff. I think there's a couple options we can do.
Yeah, okay. How do you feel, Kerry?
Yeah, I don't mind going ahead and giving this thing the approval, the thumbs up, and maybe going ahead and let the staff take care of it.
Yeah.
I think staff has got a report here, and I think we're good to go. We want to get oxygen to the hospital and not hold it up with a fence. It seems silly. But I get that there's the visual impact and their neighbors. That's why we're on the board. But I think, let's go ahead and I personally feel like it's okay to go ahead and let it go with the notion that, come on, let's get a better fence in here, maybe, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
With staff approval.
And if we go that path, I just ask, I think that's considered like a anti-climb wire mesh fence is when I was Googling it, that's kind of what I was coming up with.
Generally,
that's what I want the condition kind of, doesn't have to be specific, but it just has to kind of match that general, type of fence.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Same here.
All right, somebody want to craft a motion for that? Or I'll take a stab at it. So it sounds like we have a motion for approval, but that the fence component will come back for staff review and approval.
I'll make a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Nope.
None. Let's call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Nate, thank you very much for working with us on that and helping us through a better understanding. So appreciate that.
Thanks, guys.
And Nate, as a heads up, I'll probably get you the approval letter either before 5:30 today or early tomorrow morning.
That's perfect. Thank you.
All right. That's fast. Can you prove that project I submitted a couple weeks ago too?
I think that one's on the bottom of the pile.
No.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, so
Never hurts asking.
that's always the easy part now. Just crafting the final approval letter is the easy thing.
Sounds good. What else? Is that all we have on our, that's all we have, right?
That's it.
All
And,
right.
Great. Well,
heads up,
thanks again, guys. It's always a treat. Pleasure.
Yeah, it's nice seeing you guys. Try to keep it light the first couple of meetings since we've had a nice long break.
He's into it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Very much appreciate that.
That's
Yeah.
We did a lot last year.
Yeah.
I know. Reading those minutes, I was reminded of just how much we had at the end of the year there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll try to space everything out a little bit better this year.
Oh, it's all good. You doing it. Thanks.
Thank you guys.
All right.
I'll see you in
See
2
you later.
weeks.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks
care.
all.